Ah, another video. Can you believe it? Yeah, I can't believe it. This is quite a run. But anyway, so fake sake, I finished up on the more question video, and it actually ended with, you know, him doing the whole kind of nice thing, you know, which is irritating, you know, in this context. You know, I can't dislike you as a person, kind of stuff, and yeah, I'm willing to go that far. I mean, I'm willing to say, you know, that this whole whatever these contests, these interactions, again, it's, you could even take it to the gladiator arena or something and just say, even though they will eventually, one of them will kill the other, you know, or something. They may have acquired respect for each other, and you know, when they put that last jab into his neck, you know, to finish him off, put him out of his misery, you know, they'll do so lamenting, and but also out of respect, in a sense, or some kind of blah 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 blah, and all of that crap. But yeah, that's a symptom of being one of these gooey feel bags. You know, is that's yeah, that happens in our life. We even the shitty parts of our life become friendly. They become something that we habitize to, and all of that. I don't want to trivialize it, but it's that kind of thing. Sort of, kind of. Alright, anyway, so he made, previous to that, he did make some really silly arguments that need to be, I'll just state that's a silly argument. So I've already done the non-existent right thing, so he can't imagine how this future thing is just as real as the present thing or the past thing, in the sense that it's just about as inevitable. You can't really, you know, unless you want to play some kind of silly game. 4 billion years my genetic code has been floating around here, and the truth is there's little reason to expect it not to be floating around tomorrow. Although at my age, there's now a 5% chance it won't be floating around next year. You know, which is sort of, whoa, that's spooky. Well, it's 3.7 something, maybe, I don't know. It's the number's starting to rise. That every year there's this snake eyes on the dice, and if I roll them, I'm time to leave. So yeah, it is spooky. It's like when, you know, I think about my parents living into their 90s. Every day, with every year when they roll the dice, it's 50-50. I mean, it's the odds suck. You know, whether they're going to be around next year. You know, it's like rolling dice and just constantly getting the right number, and you're just like, hey, I did it again, 10 in a row. You know, yeah. Creepy. It's creepy. You know, it's fact of life, but I just mean, frankly, that's my whole conversation here, is this whole thing is too fucking creepy to be forcing people to play. Anyway, alright, then I, you know, you use these metaphors like the ash heap of history, or pissing on the grave, or even talking about people rolling over in their grave, right? So if somebody wanted to get me to understand that I'm being a complete asshole, right? If somebody wants to really make me feel like a complete asshole, they would say something, if Jack Kevorkian could hear what you're saying, he'd be rolling in his grave. You know, that would be a way you could get to me. Now, it can't possibly happen, but it sends the message of how this is the definition of failure. So these metaphors are just metaphors. There doesn't have to be real people really in the future pissing on my grave for me to understand the concept of deserving it. And that's all that matters. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about an actual punishment. Just like hell is probably just a thing made up to give people some idea that there's an alternative that sucks, that you really don't have a choice. You either go to heaven or you're really, really fucked. So even though heaven doesn't sound like much, sit in your chair and pet the clouds. It's better than hell. Anyway. Okay, so then he does something. I just, this one is just an argument from total insanity. Sorry, I mean, I can't make any sense out of it. That a negative is better than a zero because it's a number. See, zero is, in his opinion, isn't a number. It doesn't have a value correlate. And in my opinion, of course, it has a value correlate. That's why we put it in there, is because it does actually represent the non-existent positive that isn't a negative. And then you go negative. But it's like saying debt is the same as profit, to say that it doesn't matter that there's a minus sign in front of the number or a plus sign. It does matter. And yes, you're better off having no profit and no loss than having loss. So I just can't make any sense out of that. It's, as I labeled it, stupid. That's stupid. Yeah, sorry, I can't make any sense out of that. You've mentioned Brett Keane again, and Brett Keane has come up with these different little things. Brett Keane changes his mind every 3 minutes. It's irrelevant to talk about what Brett Keane says at any moment, at any time. It's just stupid. Every 3 minutes, Brett Keane changes his mind. Or whatever, the wind blows through Brett Keane's blubber and, solidifies some piece of it into a notion, and he mispronounces it, and then they move on to the next frozen bit of blubber. But whatever. Brett Keane is an asshole. He's just a scheming, manipulative asshole. Anyway. So the likability thing, okay. I mean, I have this problem with a lot of people. I mean, it's like, Piro more than you, actually, in some sense. I mean, if Piro came to my house again, I'd be really compelled to just hit him over the head with a shovel. He's just so fucking annoying. I know he's going to be annoying. I know he's just going to keep doing this thing where he's going to keep taking... He just won't admit what he is. He's got some kind of scheme. I mean, he has some kind of secret communist thing or something. I don't know what the fuck it is. It's some kind of angel theory or some kind of dream catcher crap that he caught in a dream catcher or something. Some kind of crappy bullshit theory about reality. Like it's all made out of Jell-O pudding. And he keeps trying to make sure that nobody describes reality in such a way that he can't apply his Jell-O pudding theory. But he won't let anybody in on the Jell-O pudding crap because he knows everybody's going to say, "You're fucking insane." So, he says stupid things and defends stupid ideas merely because he's sewing, whatever, a blankie out of Jell-O pudding. Anyway. But yeah, maybe you're just as bad, so, maybe... I got lots of shovels and hammers. Still friends. Yeah, well, I mean, I just can't avoid being something. I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know if it's really friends, but yeah, frankly, we're fellow worms that have slimed on each other. And, once you've done that, you've done that. I mean, whoops, I touched your penis. Whoops. Whatever the thing is, it's, yes, we're somehow, we did that, what was that stupid, crappy, silly movie? Not Aliens, but the really, the really lame version. E.T. Yeah, we did that little stupid E.T. thing. Anyway, so you give me this win is about doubt, and well, that doesn't, clearly people are going to have doubts about extraordinary theories. So, the more extraordinary your theory or narrative is, the more likely you're going to have doubt. So I just say I have the huge advantage that I have the crudest and simplest. My theory is so mechanical and void of moving parts, so to speak, or uncomplicated. It's just this what is the consequence of unintelligent design. Obviously, it's not going to be something brilliant. It's going to be drool and boogers. It's just not going to be anything really cool. It's just going to be the excretions of a imbecile. And so, yes, I would argue I don't have to worry about the doubt thing, just because I don't have any extraordinary, I'm not relying on a leprechaun or some other kind of element to make it all make sense. I'm making it make sense out of the pieces that are physical and real, and, it's little atomic parts, and, the fact that they evolved into a survivable chemistry. Again, I can just illustrate that's inevitable. No matter what I put in a jar, something's going to win. If I put 100 anything in a jar and shake it up, in a sense, something's going to win and something's going to lose. Something's going to get abraded into nothing, and something's going to be able to, by luck alone, by lucky bounces, is going to retain its integrity. It's just the way it works. And that's what we're a byproduct of. We're just the little bits that have formed and shaped. And I would argue that our obligation is to appreciate what has been ground up for us to do this silly play we're putting on. We're doing our little performance art, and the theater was made out of the bones of the Jews or something. I mean, it's really Hitler-esque, just horrible Frankenstein experiment that this is all made out of. And if you scratch at it, you'll see, oh fuck, this is made out of bones. This isn't good. I don't want to really be a part of the bone theater. Anyway, so that sums up. And so I'll play this next one, which probably gets a little crankier, I don't know. That's the problem with these videos when they start coming in these numbers, is that this has often happened before, where there's a lag time, where I haven't finished video the A and you're already doing video C, responding to my video 4, and it's like we're not on exactly the same page. So it gets a little bit convoluted in terms of both attitude and subject matter. But playing along.
Okay, you're too fucking stupid. All you know is your hamburger, and you're just defending eating hamburgers. That's all you're doing. You're so insecure. You're such a little tiny-minded person that all you're doing is scheming. How can I eat?
Alright, so I made this part in response to his trivial and superficial description of the motivations and the creation of my philosophy. He trivialized it like you're afraid of snakes or something, or some kind of silly thing. You think it's a snake and it's really a balloon.
More hamburgers. I have to justify eating more hamburgers because I'm addicted to hamburgers. Okay, so I'll just cut your whole philosophy into some sort of anal turd, okay? It's just so fucking insulting. So shove that shit up your ass. I am so sick of this bull fucking shit. You can't make a rational argument. You can't explain how evolution isn't a Borg. You can't explain how your fucking imposition of suffering on individuals isn't an obscene fucking arrogance. You can't defend your fucking arrogance.
Good video. Yeah. Go get him, Gary. Well, let's see, I'll read what this says here. A sunset is good, well, whatever, and an earthquake is bad only because we deem them so. Well, again, I already made this argument, so I'm not going to remake it. But clearly what I'm arguing is those things can be incidentally described indirectly. They're consequential because they affect things that have value. It's the stuff in the china shop, okay? The china shop doesn't have value. The walls don't have value. The china has value. And the china shop protects the china, that kind of thing. The thing I said was precious was the sentient experience. I don't think you're going to be able to argue that that isn't precious, that isn't the source of value. That somehow you can make an argument about some value in the rest of the universe without making a consequential argument that somehow is going to affect something that will feel good or feel bad. I don't think you can.
Arrogance. So fuck you in the ass with this goddamn personal shit for brain. You're a fucking dumb, stupid turd and you can't defend it intellectually, so all you do is, as the cheap shotter does, you just keep fucking attacking the messenger. You fucking little weaselly cunt. It's a fallacy. Your argument is fallacious, weak. You have a weak, limp argument, okay, and you're defending yourself as, oh, no, I'm the strong, fake Sagan. No, you're not. You're a weak fucking pussy.
That's a good ending. Very, very dramatic. I liked it. Anyway, so I'll read a little bit more. We deem them so. Rainbow is good and tornado is bad only because we deem them so. You did say that twice. Outside the confines of our subjective perception. Well, again, these are objective statements that there's a thing called torture, there's a thing called pleasure. These are accurate descriptive statements, and these things in the world can create amounts of this stuff, and we know one of them to be bad and one of them to be good, and this isn't that complicated, or at least one of them to be not bad, and that's the key word here. We know what bad is, and we know what you want to minimize is any kind of wasted suffering. By your silly theory, again, I could go to another planet and torture everything on the planet, and somehow it's okay, because torture doesn't mean anything. It wouldn't be okay. It could never be rationally described as okay. It's just not, unless you could prove that by torturing all of them, I prevented twice as much torture. The badness of the torture is bad, and certainly if it's wasted, if it's caused for no good reason, that is, no compensating reason, it's bad. I mean, it's just, fuck you. This is stupid. So anyway, all four of those merely are value-neutral natural phenomena. Well, again, it's not value-neutral when sentients are sitting on top of the ground. Earthquakes aren't value-neutral. It's entirely possible to hate the cupcake and love the nail. Well, again, we're not talking about the nail and the cupcake. We're talking about the sensations that would be associated with those experiences. So again, you're breaking the fundamental premise of the argument. The argument wasn't nail and cupcake isolated from sentient being. The argument was cupcake enjoyed, nail in the eye, sensations commensurate. That's the argument, and you're just evading it.
I can't help but notice that you seem just a little bit perturbed, Gary.
Yes, well, the context of the video will demonstrate why I'm perturbed. It's because your simplistic mischaracterization of my entire philosophy, as if it's just an expression of I stubbed my toe and I'm crying, was so trivial and insulting that it deserves an insulting reply.
You know, the conventional wisdom when it comes to debates on the internet is that when one party loses their temper or begins making...
Yeah, again, that's the convenient conventional notions of the nihilist. Of course the nihilist would say that, because the nihilists don't value anything. So of course they come into the argument as if it's academic, because they don't care. The people who don't care aren't going to have any kind of passion for anything besides a conversation about where the white women at. Okay, so if that's all you're saying is I only show up for the debate if I'm paid, or somehow I'm fascinated by the subject, but you're not invested in any other way, like knowing that the Holocaust is evil, that starving and torturing and working and poisoning and diseasing people to death, and of course gas chambering them to death, is okay. I mean, fuck you. Again, I can't say it loud enough, okay? So your nihilist cunts will sit there and qualify. This is the only way you debate. It's in some kind of academic way, even if we're going to talk about, you know, sticking nails in your eye, so to speak. No, it's not academic, fuckhead.
Comparisons of the other party to Adolf Hitler, the debate is over. However...
Well, again, there's no... What else are you going to compare? I compare mostly to Mengele, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. The point is how else do you do anything is through comparison. That's what a debate is. You're comparing one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing to demonstrate that it's in the category bad. Here, it looks just like this bad. It looks just like this bad. It looks just like this one. It looks just like this one. That's how it works. So again, this idea that I'm going to negate all conversation. I mean, what's stupid is to say, because somebody says something like, I think we need a fair economic system, and they go, communist, Stalin. Well, that's illegitimate. But if I argue that imprisoning animals and torturing them looks a lot like kind of an evil genocidal plan thing. It looks a lot like that. I don't care. I don't feel their pain. Who feels Jew pain? Jews aren't people.
Far be it from me to, in a troll-like fashion, simply dismiss this debate and declare victory because you're rage quitting.
Well, I'm not rage quitting
I think that would be kind of a cheap cop-out if I were to do that.
Well, I'm saying you can't do that.
Shouting and insults are kind of par for the
quitting is not what's happening. And again, I'm not going to apologize for my passion, especially when some asshole has come on the internet and says, I have respect for you and I wish to have this conversation and understand how you think. Yet, in spite of the fact that you've made all these videos and I've known you for 10 years, I'm going to characterize you as a death cultist. When I'm not saying anything has to die at all. I'm just saying don't make new ones. I'm saying turn off the Xerox machine. I'm not saying cut your nuts off. So you're just lying about who I am and I'm not supposed to react? Fuck you! I'm going to react. Cunt.
Course with you, and I really just gloss over that stuff. I consider that is your style, your argumentation style. And I'm less concerned with style than substance.
No, it has to do with everyone else's style. Okay, so frankly, I don't bring it. You brought it, asshole. Okay, so there's no contest here. If you played the clip before, where I played your stupid clip, the context was there. You trivialized my entire philosophy, and trivialize the effort and work that has gone into being able to articulate it. All of it. You just trivialized it. Fuck you.
So, you can call me a retard, a selfish, whatever the hell else you said.
Yes.
Hamburger eater. And that doesn't really bother me. However, you have begun introducing dishonest debate tactics. And that's a little bit more of a problem.
Let's hear it.
It always starts, this is the standard, is the fallacious straw man premise, and therefore the rest of the conversation becomes broken because there's a fallacious straw man premise that I'm supposed to have agreed with that I never agreed to.
A straw man fallacy. I don't know about that, Gary. Now, a straw man fallacy, for anybody who doesn't know, which I'm sure is nobody, is where you will create a weaker substitute for your opponent's argument and then refute that. It
doesn't have to be weaker. It just has to be not their argument. It's a fake argument. It's a misdirection. It's completely not the subject. The straw man can be all kinds of not the real thing. It can be not the real thing in a lot of different ways. Not just a weaker argument, but an argument that is not only made of nothing, yes, but that is not the thing. Not real. Fake. Easily broken. A facade. Just merely the facade of the argument.
Instead of refuting the actual argument. So, for example, an environmentalist argues for reducing carbon emissions, and then an auto industry expert refutes the environmentalist by saying, oh, well, this guy wants to restrict the right of free travel, and I don't agree with restricting the right of free travel. Well, that would be a straw man fallacy, because the environmentalists never argued for the reduction of the right of free travel.
Well, I don't think that would be, actually, I don't think that's a straw man, because the consequence is the consequence. So you can't separate the statement from the consequence. I can argue that drunk driving is bad. Now, if I don't make a consequence, if I'm not suggesting a policy, why would I even say it?
Merely argue for the reduction of carbon emissions. Now, you've accused me of employing a straw man fallacy against you, Gary, and if I understand correctly, what this seems to be in reference to is
death cult.
the description in my most recent video, which reads as follows. To the Ethelist, life itself is a Ponzi scheme, whereby the chumps who have already bought into it can only mitigate their losses by suckering new victims into the scheme through procreation.
Right, and I don't accept that as the premise. That's not something I have ever even contemplated as their purpose. I've never implied or even thought that the people who are procreating think they're actually validating their failure by creating a new failure. No, it's exactly the opposite syndrome. In spite of their failure, they think, like Einstein says, like an idiot, they think if we do this again, it'll work out better this time. That's the silliness of their argument. They don't consider failure. They only consider, I can fix all the things that I did wrong. And they're not realizing that they're setting the new person up for all kinds of things you didn't have to overcome. They're going to be running into all new kinds of traffic and all kinds of new hazards. And it's just idiotic to say, I've prepared them because I gave them blacksmithing talent. And nobody's a blacksmith anymore. You didn't give them anything. You gave them nothing. Because they're not going to live in the world you lived in. They're going to live in the world you made, which is even shittier. It's the one with $20 trillion worth of debt.
Gary, I think I've adequately distilled the essence of your philosophical position,
and I've directly refuted it and stated you haven't. I've never said it. So quote me implying that that's why people are having kids, is because misery loves company. I never made that argument.
You disagree. I'd like for you to explain in a clear and lucid way why you disagree. You know, I've heard you say things in your videos such as...
People have kids out of vanity, pure and simple. It's a vain effort to escape, living their life, and they'll just force it on somebody else and live vicariously. It's like they wish to make the TV show and just watch their life on TV. And look, for a lot of people, like women, I guess they're people, whatever it is, they need to have this thing to take care of. So, but my argument would be they can do that by getting one of those little dogs and feeding it turkey all day. I'm not for that, but I'm just saying it's better than making babies.
Procreation is an act of rape against the rights of the unborn. That it's a deprivation of rights to create a new life and bring a new sentient biological life form into an existence defined by suffering and pain.
It's not an authorized risk. That's right. It's the Frankenstein scenario. You don't have a right to wake the dead, and it's essentially the same thing. You don't have a right to assume for them that you're doing them a favor. It's obviously a risk-latent game. Therefore, you don't just strap them in and say, go for it, because you want to go for it.
That is the crux of your philosophical position, Gary. How have I employed a straw man fallacy? In fact, if there's any fallacy going on here, I think it's an attempted...
Well, like I said, I think I've described that isn't my argument, and I can only keep saying that isn't my argument of why people procreate. People procreate because they're dumb, selfish cunts. I can't make it any clearer than that. Vain, dumb, selfish cunts who don't consider the real consequences of their act. They're as reckless as a drunk driver. I've compared them to drunk drivers. I compared them to Frankenstein creators, not really measuring what they're getting themselves into by creating life and the fact that you're now responsible for it. I've compared it to saving a drowning man, and now you're responsible for every good and bad deed he conducts himself in. I've compared it to lots of things, and I never have written it as as trivially as you stated my position. The evil they're committing is much more complicated than merely, okay, pretending that they'll escape anybody noticing what a douchebag they are by creating another douchebag.
Goalpost move on your part. You know, I've made some very difficult...
Well, frankly, I'm the one allowed to describe who I am, not you. Okay, so again, if you're going to sit there and tell me it's not straw manning, if you're going to refuse to accept my definition of what I've said, and instead you're going to tell me what I said or what I believe, well, frankly, I mean, you're just being overtly, you're just sitting there waving the straw in my face and saying, no, fuck you, I'm going to do all the straw manning I can whenever I can, but I'm never going to call it that. But obviously that's what you're doing, you're just denying it, but you're doing it overtly, straw manning.
Call to dismiss objections to antinatalism, and rather than dealing with those, you're trying to move the goalposts. You're trying to read.
Well, again, another fallacious, just complete crap of a statement. I mean, I've only sat there and spent whatever it is now, hours, doing exactly that, refuting your fucked up arguments. Okay, so I can't be more meticulous in attempting to say why this isn't a death cult, why I've in 4,000 videos I've never suggested a group suicide or mass suicide or suicide as a solution ever, except in the context of arguing for the right for people in pain to die peacefully. But never has suicide ever entered the conversation as some kind of response to an ugly world.
Find your original position to evade the objections that I've raised to it.
Well, again, it's just an outrageous mischaracterization of the truth. That's not a straw man, it's just a fucking lie, a grotesque and preposterous lie. A fucking slander to attempt to say, somehow I haven't made the argument and you have now refuted it and it's completely, I've done my reputation and I've won. No such thing fucking happened. I've totally destroyed your nonsensical arguments. I've annihilated them. I've shown them to be vaporous and insensible. 0. -2 is better than nothing. Being in debt is better than not being in debt. Oh, I think just saying those words, fucking, I win.
So if you don't accept the premise that suffering is very different than comfort...
Gary, you already know that I don't accept that premise. Unless you really only did walk...
Right, exactly my point. I mean, you're a nihilist. You're not a Christian. Christians certainly understood the difference. That's why they describe heaven and hell, is because they know the difference, right? God wasn't saying, hey, I'll set up two things that are almost exactly alike. Heaven and hell. They're almost the same thing, and so choose which one you want to go to. Did the Christians do that, Christian? I mean, you're the authority now, right? You're a Christian, so you tell me. Is that what God intended you to believe? That heaven is just as good as 0 and just as good as hell? No, I don't think so. What makes hell hell? Oh, the fact that you're on fire and suffering. Is there something else you're doing in hell? Is hell eating cupcakes? Is hell looking at cupcakes? Is hell, what is exactly this hell thing? Being Donald Trump?
Watch the first 3 minutes of my video, which I've noticed is the only part you responded to, even though I asked you a number of questions in my last video, and you haven't answered any of them.
Well, again, I'm sorry, but yes, I've been busy making videos, and so clearly there was no indication I wasn't going to answer them. It was no indication I was not going to complete the video, so straw man some more nonsensical accusations, a vaporous accusation that I somehow intended to evade your questions and I've somehow manipulated my conversation to evade the substance. Well, you have no proof of that. I have the notes right here of the end of your last video. Did I miss something you stated in your last video? No. So another bogus lie. Another slander against my character.
But I also spent a significant portion of the video talking about the nature of pleasure and pain and how they are subjective and interchangeable. So
I didn't see that part. Sorry, I didn't see the part where you explained how chemotherapy is like an orgasm. How those two things have something to do with each other. All I heard you talk about is how sometimes it feels good to have a little extra pressure on your penis. Now, I don't know exactly how that's torture. It feels good. You didn't say, it does hurt. It hurts intensely, but I love pain. You didn't even say that. But even if you said that in a sexual context, then we get into the whole sadomasochist thing, and we know that the sadomasochist really doesn't like being in pain. It's just that he's emotionally so fucking broken, okay, that it's the only release he has is humiliation and pain. He needs some pain to get rid of his bigger emotional pain.
yeah, your premise that there's a world of difference between suffering and pleasure is one that I roundly reject. I mean, you should know that.
I should? Again, how was I to expect that you were still a vacuous nihilist? You said you were a Christian. Again, show me in Christianity where the pain of the leper is irrelevant, where the festers of the woman are irrelevant. Why did God give women pain in childbirth if pain wasn't a punishment? If it wasn't something to be considered bad? If God was imposing it as a reward, so it was really a reward. Eve was rewarded for taking the apple and giving it to Adam. She was rewarded with the pain of childbirth. That's a fucking goddamn, that's her trophy. She should wear it with pride. So of course she's not in hell, she's in heaven because she did a wonderful thing. Sorry. This is convoluted crap that you're spewing.
Allow me to go into a little bit further detail. The example that you've used to illustrate the difference between good and bad, pleasure and pain, is eating a cupcake or having a nail driven through one's eye. Obviously, eating the cupcake is good and it represents pleasure, whereas having the nail driven through one's eye is bad and it represents suffering and pain.
Yes, it represents something that I'm using an example that is far enough on the side of the fence where only a crazy pervert could make the cupcake into an evil, and only a crazy pervert could make the sensations of a nail in your eye into something good. Yes. So I'm just using any generic example of something that is clearly on one side of the fence and clearly on the other side of the fence. Yes, that's the purpose of the analogy.
However, there's nothing objectively good about eating a cupcake, and there's also nothing objectively bad.
Again, the argument is the sensation that is felt. So again, if you're going to negate the existence of the sensation, then there's no point in the conversation. The only thing I'm getting to is the sensations involved. The sensation is innately and intrinsically, by natural design, bad. That's exactly what it wouldn't work if it wasn't bad. The whip doesn't work if it doesn't cause bad. The carrot doesn't work if it doesn't cause good. Oh, fuck. We're mechanisms being rewarded and punished. There's just no cognitive sense to saying punished is rewarding and rewarding is punishing. You can't break language this severely and then tell me this is a possible conversation.
About having a nail driven through one's eye. Value is created in the mind. It's created through our subjective experience.
Again, it's recognized in my opinion. It's in the world. Every sentient organism is... Okay, every sentient organism is doing it. Okay, and smart things can recognize it. There's value happening. There's a feeling thing sensating that's valuable.
Of external stimuli. And it has everything to do with perception. Perception defines reality. You're actively creating.
Again, so perception defines reality. I'm saying exactly the opposite. It recognizes reality. So there's really no room for a conversation. You say you made the moon. I'm saying you didn't make the moon. The moon is the moon. It has craters. It can be described. What sentient organisms are can be described. The difference between a sentient organism and a bottle of nicotine can be described. The difference between a sentient organism and a battery can be described. These differences can be identified. They're noticeable. They're categorizable. They have properties that are definable. This is just a nonsensical conversation. I do not make the reality. I do not make the universe. I do not make the sun. I don't make any of this stuff. I recognize it and accurately describe it or inaccurately describe it. And I think it's preposterously inaccurate to say -3 is the same as +3, or to say something as ludicrous as punishment is the same as reward.
Creating reality moment to moment through your perceptions of the external world around you.
I'll just shit, and the shit will be washed downstream. I don't use the water that goes downstream, so there's absolutely no reason for me not to just shit in the stream and say, who cares? Doesn't bother me any. That's a future problem. No, that's illogical. I think it's illogical that anybody recognizes the future is going to likely exist, and it's completely dependent on what we have done.
Gary, I find it ironic that you accused me of employing a straw man fallacy against you when I didn't, whereas you are attempting to employ one against me.
I'm sorry, I read your quotes, I read your statements, I played your video. There was no straw man fallacy. You mocked the idea of the non-existent beings having rights. It's only by acknowledging their rights that I would not shit in their stream. The only way I don't shit in their stream is acknowledging their existence and acknowledging that they have rights to drink clean water. Fuck, you mocked that. Ha 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 ha! How could the non-existence have a right? That, especially one that would trump mine. My convenience rights are so much more important than their non-existence maybe baby rights.
By suggesting that I don't acknowledge that the future is going to take place.
All right, just pretend I took the clip from his last video and I just shoved it in here where he's laughing at the non-existent beings.
A new human life, which is created, is going to exist at some point in the future. That isn't my argument. My argument was that if parents can alleviate some of the suffering of their own existence and increase their own happiness and comfort by bringing in a new life into the...
Right, by drawing a straw and shoving it in the fucking anus of a new being. I mean, frankly, this is just such... I can draw straws and shove them in your pocket. I mean, it's just bullshit. I can gamble with your welfare. That's the psychology of a drunk driver.
World, by creating a child to make themselves happy, then don't the rights of the...
Again, if a child was a cupcake, I'd say fine. If a child was something you made out of inert substance, I'd say fine. But that's not what it's made out of. It's made out of a sentient being, out of risk, out of harm. For fuck's sake.
Who actually exist and therefore are capable of having rights, don't those rights supersede the presumed anticipated rights of an entity which does not yet exist?
There, you just said it again. So again, you're saying you're acknowledging the existence, the future will exist, and you just basically said their rights are subservient to your rights. Somehow you're more real than they will be when they are real. No, they're going to be just as real as you are. There's no rational reason to say they're going to be less real than me. They're going to feel. The broken leg will be a broken leg. You can't take your pain and throw it into the future and pretend it's not real pain. Just as our debt acquisition is just exactly that. We're basically saying, I don't like mortgage payments. I don't like paying the rent. I'll just throw that into the future and make them pay it. What a pile of bullshit. Absolute preposterous bullshit.
Now, my argument is not that the child will not exist in the future. The child will exist in the future, but the child does not exist at present. So if we're going to weigh the rights of one person against the rights of another person...
Well, again, you just keep making rationalizations that excuse the behavior as if it matters when it happens. This isn't a question about if, it's about when, and when doesn't matter.
Then my argument is that the rights of the person who exists are a little bit more important than the rights of the person who...
So he's again mocking it. He's again laughing at the idea that the future person deserves the condo in the same condition you got it. That the future person deserves the rights to make decisions about their life without having you make them for it. All of this crap, all this projection that you have a right. Ha 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 ha. They're going to be in a mental institution. Ha ha ha. They're going to be tortured. They're going to be burned alive. Ha ha ha. No, these aren't your things to play with. They're not your toys.
Does not exist. Anyway, Gary, you know, this has been very illuminating for me. And I've really enjoyed this interaction, but if you'll pardon my saying so, it seems like you're running out of steam. So let me tell you what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, hilarious. 4,000 videos, and all of a sudden I'm out of steam. Yes. Oh, fake Sagan showed up. Oh, yeah, he just took all the steam out of me. What a crock of crap.
Next. If you want to continue this debate and keep it going, then I expect you to answer the questions I addressed to you in my last video entitled More Questions for Gary.
Again, and where did I not do that? I mean, where was it reasonable for him to suppose that I wasn't going to finish his video, that didn't I even say, I think I even said in the video, I'll be back, or whatever. I mean, this is just complete made-up crap of an accusation. Yeah.
Parentheses, philosophical rather than personal. And it'll be very easy for you to identify those questions because they're always prefaced with a statement such as, here's a question for you.
Yes, and I've answered the most silly fucking question. Gary, how could you possibly think that -3 is less than a 0 when a 3 is bigger than a 0? How could you think the 0 is not even a number? I mean, it doesn't have any volume because it's 0 volume. And 3, even if it has a negative, doesn't mean that there's subtraction volume. It means that there's 3 of the negative. There's not 3 of you owe me 3. There's 3 that is negative, but it's not a deficit. And it's certainly much bigger than 0. -3 is much, it's 3 times bigger than 0 at least. Yeah, I already answered that fucking inane tripe.
Alright, now if you choose to do that, then we can continue having this debate. But if you choose not to do that, and you just want to rage...
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Anderson.
And employ some pretty deep...
Yes, you completely won the karate contest, and so I'll do whatever you say, Mr. Anderson. I'm your slave, Mr. Anderson. Yes, sir. No, sorry. No sale and such.
Logical fallacies of your own, then I'm afraid we've taken this as far as it can go.
Yeah, well, I can take it a lot.
Have to go back to making my videos, and you can go back to making yours.
Yes, and you'll make a stupid one like your whatever it was one, where you threw my name in there for no good reason, and I responded. So go ahead and make one of your inane Donald Trump's a brilliant, great human being that's going to just make the world so much better with his fantastically brilliant plans. Yeah. Just, I can't, we're all going to be rich tomorrow.
Of course. And if that does happen to be the outcome, then I just want to say that I've enjoyed this interaction quite a bit, that you're still a person who I have tremendous...
Well, again, it's tremendous disrespect for, because obviously this is just a horrid, disrespectful pile of crap. You just slandered the fuck out of my character, implied that I somehow evaded your questions when there's no evidence I did any such thing. You know, mischaracterize my entire philosophy, and then just keep nagging me. No, you have to accept my characterization of what you believe. No, I don't.
Respect, admiration, and positive sentiment for. And, you know, I think this has been mostly...
I'm not feeling that, especially with this you know, bit of patronizing crap that I haven't somehow complied with some sort of fairness rule somewhere, and I have to up my game if I can play with Fakey. He won't let me in his house to play with his trucks, and you know, unless I take my shoes off and I do certain things and follow the Fakey rules, even though I've already done all that crap. He's just implying that I did something wrong, that I somehow left a booger on the wall or something. No, I didn't do any of that shit. I reject your accusations, and I think I've refuted them substantially.
Constructive.
Again, what's the grounds for our conversation? I mean, the one subject we have to resolve is the value subject. If you're going to argue that there is no real value at stake, that there is no real difference between a heaven and a hell, there's no real difference between pleasure and agony, that it's all some kind of equal, non-important thing, then what could I possibly be interested in conversing about besides talking about, you know, we could talk about sexual technique. You know, we could talk about mush. You know, how what's your favorite kind of mud? Like really loose mud or lumpy mud? What kind of mud do you like? We could do that. I could explain how to fix your door on your truck because it's really not that tough. But yeah, we can't really have a conversation about anything meaningful because you've taken meaningful out of the realm of reality. You've sucked the universe dry of meaning because you've denied the existence of this thing called a negative and turned it into some kind of, it's worth many, many, many zeros. Yes, multiple. Zillions. There's a zillion of these more than zeros between -1 and 0. There's an infinite amount of stuff between them, so there must be much more than 0 because there's an infinite amount of something between them. I'm sorry. That's just so irrational. And so if we can't agree that there's a cavern of difference, of value difference between a sentient organism, okay, enduring the sensations of having a nail in their eye, and a sentient organism enjoying the sensation of a pleasurable meal, if we can't accept that there's a cavern of value difference between those two states, that if I was to make a Frankenstein, and I made 2 Frankensteins, one with nail in eye and one with satisfaction and an enjoyable meal, that those 2 Frankensteins would have completely different value equations. If they had a badge, they'd be completely identifiable as very different organisms in very different states, value states. One would be worth making another copy, One, no way would you make another copy. That kind of thing. Anyway, the nihilist Christian. Again, can anybody make sense out of that? I mean, can anybody? Isn't the whole religion based on some sort of promised land, some sort of idea that there is a place to be that's better? I mean, can you flip through any 2 pages of the Bible without running across stark and intensely described values that relate to human condition, that relate to humans' feeling? Anyway. Nah, that's the Jew in me. People say I'm Jewish, so I don't really think it's true, but whatever. I'll accept the title. So every now and then I do that. I do. But I do the Jesus Christ thing now and then too. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, I do shit like that. Tradition. Bad thing. Bad habits. You know. I'll work on it. Till next time and such. I'm happy. Remember, I used to do like videos like that. I'm happy. Yeah, remember? Remember happy? I miss happy.